stable company, which has actually invested hugely into capital, for example, looks at growth very differently, saying that, okay, I have put in big money in, setting up a manufacturing unit or, investing in land and machinery and so on and so forth. So my growth is about return on my capital invested, for example, and, so I think the point I'm just trying to make it is one element of growth is about how do you really measure growth? What does growth mean for you? And certainly if our panelists can throw some light on it, that would be useful. The second aspect is about growth related to the world changing. And we heard some speakers earlier talking about it. So issues of hybrid working, virtualization, all of these have now come in. So a lot of people are talking about technology and this aspect of technology, virtualization. What will growth really mean in the future? Will it have the same, for example, traditionally people used to say, मेरे को 2000 आदमी report करते हैं मेरे plant में. Is that going to be growth for an individual? Tomorrow it could be saying, actually I run the plant of 2000 crores with only 5 people. Is that going to be growth? So what's the difference going to be? What parameters and measures are you going to use for growth is this whole issue of technology, digital virtualization and so on and so forth. And again, I request panelists if you can throw some light on it. That's the second aspect. I think the third aspect is around people, and which is where I think HR to a large degree comes in, that if you grow as a company in a particular way, what does it really mean to people? What skills are required? What capabilities are required? So for example, the people who were very valuable to you in the last 20 years, are the same skills and people going to be valuable to you in the next 20 years? It is going to be a completely different sets of people. So what's that people aspect, and which is where I think HR has a very critical role to play. Now, people talk about different aspects, right? So people talk about skilling, reskilling, knowledge, change, all of that. So where does all of that fit in from a purely people perspective, right? So the first aspect that I said, what is your definition of growth? The second aspect is around technology, digitalization, digital virtualization and all that aspect. The third aspect is about people. And finally, the aspect of why are you doing it? What's your purpose? So are you doing it only for the purpose of showing that you are growing? Or is there something meaningful? And I'll leave the panel members with an example, right? So for example, if you look at the telecom industry, right? There are companies which have grown by ARPU. There are companies which have grown by saying we will only have profitable growth. Okay. So for example, there are some companies saying we don't want low ARPU consumers, we want only high paying consumers. There are also others who have said, for the first 5 years I don't care actually what the ARPU is, I'll just make. But in the bargain, the industry actually now is at a stage where we don't know how long this industry can actually survive in a competitive scenario. It may possibly survive as a duopoly or as a monopoly, but will the industry survive? Companies may survive. Individual companies is a very different thing, and the same will apply to other kinds of industries as well. We'll see that in, for example, in natural resources, for example. What will growth really mean? Because if you keep digging into the earth for rare earths, for example, for the first 10 years, what's left after that? Or we've heard of growth, in terms of building infrastructure and what are the issues of ecology, environment, and so when I'm talking about purpose, I'm also talking about a much larger context of environment, that while you are growing a company, it has implications on society, implications on the environment, implications on the whole socio-ecological, socio-economic fabric, and where does that sort of, stand in the way. So again, to repeat these 4 aspects, how do you define growth? The era of technology, digital virtualization, the aspect of people, and finally the aspect of a much larger world. What is the purpose for growth? Why are you actually wanting to grow? Okay. So I'll leave you with those words, and we'll start in a particular order we've agreed. So there's my colleague there. If you can invite the lady here first to come in, she'll make a presentation. She has a formal presentation, and then we'll go to Bharat and then to Pradyuman in that order. Yeah.